It's the Critics Circle with me, Charles Gross, and Leslie Hoban Blake. Tonight, Broadway's reopening. No, really? We answer the all-important question, who is Robert Viagas? And we watch Bill Irwin Busks. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Critics Circle. And welcome back, Leslie. How have you been?
Oh, it's so good to be back, Charlie. I was not well, thank you. I was gone for an illness. I know you were not feeling well yourself. I beg everybody out there, get tested. We all let things go during the pandemic. Go get your tests. Go get all your, go have all your
Checkups.
Go see your doctors.
Yeah.
And
if you haven't been vaccinated, get vaccinated. You want to get back into the theater just as much as we do. Okay. Because very soon the theater is actually coming back. For example, The Lion King will reopen on September 14th. And not only will tickets be as low as $79, but Walt Disney is picking up all the fees, the telecharge, etc. So your ticket price is your ticket price.
It's amazing that Walt Disney is picking up anything, but it'd be nice to know your price is your price. Also opening off Broadway, a really wonderful little show called Little Shop of Horrors, one of the best productions, brand new casting in Jeremy Jordan as the lead, along with Christian Borle, who already won a Drama Desk Award for his role in that show. Just fabulous show. And that opens on the 21st of September.
Right. Also off Broadway, if you're looking for a laugh, heaven knows we need one, the best place to go is The Play That Goes Wrong. And that will be reopening on October 15th.
If you want a feel-good show, on October 8th, you can go see Tina again. Tina, the Tina Turner Show. And it's the story of Tina from her childhood to her adulthood. And you have to walk away singing and bopping and dancing. It's wonderful.
Yes. And if you can't wait until Tina reopens, Come From Away, the show that was inspired, ironically, by 9/11, about a bunch of airplane travelers trapped in a small Canadian town and how they learned to love each other. And it's a lot of fun, a very nice feel-good musical.
Very uplifting, no
Yes.
Pun intended. And my last show is a straight play, To Kill a Mockingbird, the Aaron Sorkin fantastic show, largest cast on Broadway. And only one of 7 or 8 new straight plays that'll be there, but it's coming back with its original star, Jeff Daniel. If you didn't see it the first time, you can't miss it. It's also uplifting in a very different way. I'll bet you can recognize one of those guys, even with a mask on, Stokes Mitchell. And I'll bet you can't recognize the other guy, even with his mask off. And that's because he's the most unknown, best known guy around Broadway. You've held his name in your hand every time you've gone to the theater for many, many years. His name is Robert Viagas. He was with Playbill magazine for many years, and now he's got a brand new project, which he brought to Critics Circle to tell us about. Here we go.
Our guest today is one of the busiest journalists in the theater. He has written numerous books on the subject. In 1994, he took the radical step of taking Playbill, that's the magazine you get in the theaters, and putting it online. Now, almost 30 years later, he is taking what may be a more radical step. He is starting a new theater magazine in print. Welcome, Robert Viagas.
In print, there it is,
Yes.
in hardcover, beautiful colors.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on the show.
That's our
I'm really
pleasure.
looking forward to talking to you guys. Your organization has just been fantastically supportive of theater down through the years, and you deserve kudos for that.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. We really appreciate that. And we started our show in this particular show as a result of the shutdown, because we were 2 on the aisle could not have, there were no aisles for us to be 2 on, is the joke. There was nothing there. So we're talking to people how people are dealing during the pandemic. Mm-hmm. Among other things. And you're dealing, of course, with just starting a brand new magazine. I just wanted to say, and this is by way of a very long question. I just wanted to say that were there a lot of naysayers at all at the time that you've started this? Because you actually began it when I have January, February, March, April here. So
that's correct. And May is just about to. Well, you may have the May one. This is the May one.
Oh, I have that online. I've seen that online, that
right.
cover. But were there naysayers, and was it an uphill
Well,
swim or
Well, here's the thing.
upstream swim? Excuse me.
I had spoken with I have two publishers, Brantley Manderson and Louis Doucette. And we had talked about doing this magazine for about a year before before COVID. We were going to launch a theater magazine. When COVID struck and all the theaters closed, we also decided to wait and see on the magazine. Because if you remember, originally they closed all the theaters down the second week in March, and they were saying we're going to be closed at least 2 weeks. So we thought, oh, April 1st, we'll be back in business. And of course, that has proven not to be the case. So a couple of months went by, and we actually sat down and we said, let's rethink this. Let's take another approach here. Theater people love theater. Theater people want to see theater, and they haven't been able to see it. And who knows when they're going to get to see it. Maybe this would be a good time to launch the magazine. Maybe this would be a time to give something to people, to theater lovers, so that they can stay connected with the theater. So that was our initial thought. And so we started looking into it and talking to distributors and talking to writers. And we found one thing that turned out to be a wonderful plus for us. A lot of the best theater writers, the mighty engines, were idling. They were like, we really want to write, but we have nothing to write about. So I was able to walk around and pick up Peter Felicia and Ken Bloom and Cara Joy David and Evelyn Chow and all these incredible writers, because they were being certainly underused, to say the least. So I was able to walk out and get all these incredible people, including a photo editor. We were talking about who would we love to get as our dream photo editor. And we thought, it would be great. I wonder what Joan Marcus is doing. And do you know who Joan Marcus is? You may want to tell your listeners.
She's on our credits all the time because we're using her picture. She, as you were about to say, takes all the pictures
of theater photographers. Basically, she is it.
So not only did we get a wonderful photo editor, we also got somebody who has an incredible treasury of photographs. And one of my desires for this magazine is to really make it a showcase for photography. Don't forget, I worked for 24 years at Playbill, and there was a wonderful time working there for the most part. And I was able to be very creative there. But as far as the actual print magazine is concerned, it's a teeny tiny little magazine. And so the biggest we could run a picture was still quite small. Whereas if you open up this magazine, you'll see we showcase photography in here. A lot of them are Jones, but they're not just Jones. Joan knows every photographer in the business, and they all kind of owe her favors. And so we have been able to get unbelievable pictures for this. The magazine is for the audience. It's really kind of a lifestyle magazine for the theater audience. Because we're so lucky that we're able to work in this business, we're able to see many, many shows. I myself have seen more than 2,000 shows just on Broadway in my career, not to mention off Broadway, et cetera, et cetera. Very few people get to be that incredibly lucky. And I am grateful that I've been able to do that. Most people only see 3 to 5 shows a year if they're lucky. And that's, they wait for the national tour to come in. That is their connection with the theater. My question is, what do they do to stay connected with theater between those shows? What do they do to pursue their interest in theater when they're not actually watching theater? When I was a kid, I grew up in a working class family. We couldn't afford to go to the theater. So what did I do? I used to listen to WVNJ in New Jersey. Ed Hurley, he had a show on called Curtain Time. And 5 nights a week, he would play an entire cast album, as many as he could fit into his hour, minus commercials. For a long time, I thought that 1776 ended after he plays the violin, because that's all he could fit on the show. But I would record them on my father's old reel-to-reel recorder, and I'd actually hang microphones in front of the speakers, and I would record these things. And so cast albums and the pictures on the cast albums, Broadway took place in my imagination. And for a lot of people, even today, that is still the case. And I wanted to create something that was a massively expanded and improved version of looking at the pictures on the cast albums. So that's, if you'll notice, a lot of the stories that we have in here are not about a specific show. They are about people's interest in the show. Even something like, I'll give you an example of one story that I really loved assigning. In Central Park, right near the Delacorte Theater, they have the Shakespeare Garden, where they planted all 175 plants that are mentioned in Shakespeare. And I thought, I bet a lot of my readers would love to have a little Shakespeare garden behind their house. So I got a person who was very knowledgeable about gardening to do a story on how you can plant your own Shakespeare garden. Again, it's not going to see a show, but it's your connection with the theater. And you could say, oh yes, well, you know, a rose by any other name would smell as sweet, and you can smell my rose right there. There's just so many things that they can do to connect with the theater that's not involved with, you know, sitting in Sardi's like I am right now.
Right. We noticed that you were sitting in Sardi's. It's
Oh yes. Sardi's is looking very nice. Very
That's right.
generous of them to give it the whole restaurant to do the interview.
yes, they gave you
It's
the
the
whole
magic of the theater, and it's the magic of the internet, where I can find an image and just stick it.
and the power of Robert Viagas.
Out of the
Yes.
staircase in my house.
Yes.
Were you ever actively in theater, or was it always about writing about theater?
Well, I have to tell you, well, the answer to your question is both. When I was in high school, I'm 6'4", and I love theater. So I'm tall, I'm male, and I come to rehearsals. And in high school, that's the key to stardom. So I was actually in my H. Frank Carey High School on Long Island. I was in chorus in Guys and Dolls, which was the beginning of the end for me. I was in 7th grade, and they needed more guys. We had plenty of dolls. We were short on guys. And so the high school actually went into the junior high school and said, if there's some tall guys, you could get extra credit by being in the show. So that was kind of the beginning of the end for me. I was the star in Bye Bye Birdie. I didn't play Birdie. I played the songwriter. I played the Dick
Albert.
Van Dyke.
You played
I
Albert.
played the Albert Peterson. I played the Dick Van Dyke part.
Dick Van
Thank you
Dyke,
for
yes,
the-
right.
Thank you for that. By the way, our Birdie was Sam Ash Jr. For those who may be listening in other parts of the country,
With the guitar.
Sam Ash is a big
right.
music store, and Sam's father came to see the rehearsals, and we had this terrible little amplifier and speaker, and he took one look at that and he said, my son is not going to be using that if he's going to be playing Birdie. And the father brought in this huge load of giant speakers on the stage, and when he hit that first chord in Honestly Sincere, it like blew out the circuit breaker on the high school. So that was my Bye Bye Birdie. To answer the other half of your question, I know this sounds nuts. It's like, you know, who wants to become a urologist? It's something you back into. Who wants to be a theater journalist? I always wanted to be a theater journalist. I started writing theater reviews for extra credit in 10th grade in my high school. And I had a column in my local newspaper, the Franklin Square Bulletin. My column was Theater in the Square. And I was 17 years old, and I was writing theater reviews in my local newspaper.
My first review was also in my high school paper. I remember it was the effect of gamma rays on
Man and the Moon Marigolds
with Shelley Winters and Carol Kane. She was between Hester Street and Taxi at the time. And I think Max
That's a
Eisen,
terrible place to be in between.
Max Eisen was the press agent.
By the way, props to Max Eisen, great press agent and a great partisan of Yiddish theater. That was his love, and we miss Max, and we
Absolutely.
miss Yiddish theater.
Well, he was actually the person who helped us do the interviews at Sardi's many years ago. But he was wonderful. He had a great office. Before we actually formally started the interview, we were kind of both reminiscing of what Times Square was when we were going. I think you had mentioned arcades. What else do you remember about Times Square in the bad old days, or the theater for that matter, Broadway for that matter?
I remember standing in front of the Brooks Atkinson Theater, which is on 47th Street near 8th Avenue, with a date. I was with a date, and a hooker from 8th Avenue came over and offered us a package deal to do both of us. I hope New Jersey doesn't object to this story, but
I think we'll be all right.
It's funny now, but at the time it was horrible. It was horrible. I remember seeing purse snatchings. They used to have 3-card Monte guys in Times Square.
At every corner.
Right. So, it's, people are, we were talking a little bit nostalgically, but I wouldn't trade it. I think Times Square, I mean, right now everything is closed down. Although I was in Times Square last week and there was a huge crowd in Times Square. I much prefer it now when the theaters are full. 42nd Street doesn't look like the Acropolis in Athens, past glory. Now all those theaters are filled. All those theaters are lit up. It's so much better than having to walk past the old broken down 42nd Street as it was not that long ago. So there are things I'm nostalgic about. I'm nostalgic about tickets being $2.50, but I'm not nostalgic for some of these evidences.
I do miss the Howard Johnsons that was on 46th Street. That was the one thing that didn't change in 40 years.
You were doing something that is really fascinating to me, and I have a question. You were going around doing 3 talks. You said you had 3 talks.
That's correct.
And they were 10 Secrets of Broadway, Haunted Theaters of Broadway, and Inside the Tony Awards with a Tony Insider. Okay, yes, I did my due diligence. Now,
thank you very much.
I want to know one of the secrets of Broadway that you gave away during that 10 Secrets of Broadway. What? Give me one.
Secrets. Now, things like, what I did was I broke it down into 2 parts. Part of it was secrets about buying tickets. People wanted to know why tickets were so expensive. And I would explain that, a lot of people like discounts on tickets. That theater tickets have become more like airline tickets. Oh, you may be sitting next to somebody who paid $200 more than you and somebody else who paid $200 less than you. The price of theater tickets has begun to float much more. Years ago, the price on the ticket was the price you had to pay.
Right.
Not so today. You can get all kinds of discounts. But something, not everybody wants discounts. And I think this is something that startles a lot of people. There are many people who they said, we have a big client coming in from out of town. He's going to be with his daughter and he wants to see Dear Evan Hansen this Saturday night. And then we want good seats in the orchestra. How can you we need you to get those for us if you want our business. And there are ways to get discounted. There are ways to get tickets even to sold out shows. And so I give them a list of websites and other sources for tickets. There's a website where you can go to that they only list whatever is the lowest price for a ticket. You can go in there and if you think to yourself, I'm going to get ripped off, no matter what I pay, I'm going to get ripped off. There is a site you can go to that will tell you what is the lowest price for a ticket. There's places where you can go and you can pay a lot of money, but you can see basically any show you want. At very short notice. You have to pay a premium, but a lot of these people who need the ticket for this weekend are on, their company
Expense
is paying for it anyway.
Yeah.
That's right. So I would share that with them. Every show has what they call house seats that they reserve just in case, the president is in town or, Barbra Streisand shows up and wants to see the show. They usually hold on to those until the day of. And then at the last minute, if nobody picks up that ticket, they have ways of distributing it. But sometimes they send that over to the TKTS line. So if you have a nerves of steel and you want to wait until 10 minutes to 8, you'll sometimes get the house seats at half price.
Now you took over in this theater column at Playbill for one time.
At this theater.
At this theater.
From the great Louis Botto.
Yes. Yes, and that was always one of my favorite columns in Playbill magazine.
And you edited a book of those as well. There's a book.
2 books. As well. We did one in 2000. Well, Louis Botto originally collected all these stories in a book that was published in 1984 called At This Theater, and they began using shortened versions of the chapters in the programs themselves for that theater.
Was there anything unusual? Anything you found surprising? Any show you think, oh, it was at that theater?
You know, it's funny. There's some guys have like every baseball stat you can possibly imagine going back to Babe Ruth in their head. And usually I can remember what theater every show played at. If you tell me the show, I can usually tell you the theater it played at and how many performances and stuff like that. It's just the way my insane brain works. Sometimes,
Well, shall we try a few examples? Are you up for that?
Well, just to answer your first question, like for instance, Rock of Ages, the big, jukebox
Grungy.
musical that used all songs, hit songs, power rock songs from the 1980s. That was at the Helen Hayes Theater, which is one of the smallest theaters on Broadway. And it just seemed odd to me that they would open something that whose subject matter was so big in such a teeny tiny theater. But they had a long run, and they sold out for a lot of that run. And so yeah, that surprised me a little bit.
Okay. So if I said, say, on the 20th Century, the original production, would you
On the 20th Century
that?
was at the St. James Theater. And it played 441 performances. Is that
now?
I
think that's, well, it was definitely at the St. James, and yeah, that's about right performance wise. And no, I'm not going to ask you how many were Madeline Kahn and how many were Judy Kay, because I don't think that's fair.
No, but Madeline was out after the first 2 weeks, and then Judy Kay took over, and I saw them both. I was at the last performance of On the 20th Century, and I waited till the audience finished applauding, and I clapped once so that I could say I was the last person to applaud for On the 20th Century on Broadway.
Well,
and it comes into the category of something I call Robert's little known and little cared about facts.
What was the first show that you went to as a writer, as opposed to an audience member, as a reviewer or a theater writer?
I started, as I mentioned, for my local newspaper when I was a kid.
Right.
I went to see a show. It was an off-Broadway show called Blasts and Bravos, an evening with H.L. Mencken. And I have to say, I was so blown away. I am still a fan of H.L. Mencken, and I collect H.L. Mencken, Menckeniana, as he called it. I collect books and his publications and things like that. And I was just blown away by that production. And I still remember that as kind of my first show that I got to see as a professional critic when I was 17.
You always remember your first. I mean,
oh God, I'm glad. Glad we got that in.
Yeah, the first off-Broadway show I ever reviewed was called The Matinee Kids, and even all the people on the Facebook websites have never heard of it. Mm-hmm. But Liz Calloway was in the cast right before she did Merrily We Roll Along.
Wow. Liz is such a talent. She's incredible.
Oh, she's amazing.
And that voice.
She's
amazing. Wow. It's like from another world.
Told us a little about the issue with Daphne on the cover. What else is in there?
All right. Well, thank you for asking that. I have written a story that I'm very proud of. That has always been something that I felt very strongly about. Nobody gives credit to orchestrators. Orchestrators help tell the story of shows as much as the playwright, as much as the composer. When you listen to Bye Bye Birdie, for instance, whenever Kim comes in, there's always flutes. She's identified by that instrument. If you listen to Man of La Mancha, it's all guitars. There's just show after show. I'll give you a more contemporary example. In Hamilton, you would think that a show that was set in the 18th century would have a lot of harpsichord in it because that was one of the dominant instruments at the time. They don't use it because a lot of the music is very contemporary, but they do use it. Like in the scene when Hamilton is listening to the person on the soapbox talking about how great the English are. When the person on the soapbox is talking about how great England is, the harpsichord comes in. It makes him sound old-fashioned. The choice of that instrument helps tell the story, helps define the character that you're listening to. So I have put together just a big load of examples like this from shows so that now you go back and you can now listen to your collection of cast albums and you can hear them in a way you never heard them before. And you realize that the choice of instruments helps to tell the story. Once again, it's not a particular show. It's something that the audience does. It's something that the audience can do to stay connected with theater. I had somebody look at all the children's theaters all over the country and all the innovative ways that they are continuing to operate during COVID, how they keep the kids still involved with the theater. So I have a wonderful story on that. I have Peter Felicia's story about crying in the theaters. I have my Planting Your Shakespeare Garden story. I got Ken Bloom to call up all the craziest people he knows who have crazy collections of theater stuff, of posters, of books, of sippy cups. We found somebody who has a collection of sippy cups from the different shows. And so we just found the most insane collections that we could come across. And we have a beautiful spread on all these people who collect theater stuff, including, I mentioned some of the things that they collect, but we also got some celebrity collectors, and we have some great pictures of their collections.
In 30 years, maybe you'll be doing another collection issue, and there will be an Encore collector who will be profiling. Robert,
nice.
Thank you so much.
You're very, very
It's wonderful
welcome
to have you.
A pleasure to see you both again and to speak with you. Thank you so much for your interest in
Bye-bye.
Encore.
Congratulations again.
Thank you very much.
So, Theater Pack Rats, you now have a unique opportunity to own every issue of Encore, but you must act quickly. Some performers, such as Bill Irwin, could not wait for the theaters to reopen. So Bill took his act down to Astor Place and busked on the streets free of charge. We're going to end with a few excerpts from that show, and Leslie and I will see you
in the Critics Circle. God, it's good to be back.
I don't know you. You have your masks. I've got mine on too. But nonsense. There are the longer sequences. You're patient. Read about Samson. You can read about his birth. Lord, he was the strongest man that ever lived on earth. And one day, Samson just walking along. Oh, well, he looked down on the ground. He saw an old jawbone. They picked him up a jawbone and swung it overhead. And when they got to moving, there was 10,000 dead. If I had my way. If I had my way, Professor, had my way, we could talk together about tearing this building down. Now, building of the stories, oligarchy. Is that the building of the stories? What would you say, sir? Mac and cheese! But, as many of us has said before, that's all there is. There ain't no more. We're not going any farther with that. Just want to tell